Normal again, Jen?
Pause. All right. Hello, and welcome to another Supporting Client Health and Wellness class presented by the Far Northern Regional Center's clinical team. My name's Jen Badger. I'm a nurse at Far Northern. I work in the Reading office, and here with me today, I have our other nurse in the Reading office. Katie, do you want to say hello?
Hi, this is Katie out of the writing office, and I'm sorry, my camera's not working today.
And then I don't know if Nellie's on. I didn't see her. But I have the pleasure of introducing our BCBA, Jamie Fisher, who will be presenting today. So take it away, Jamie.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you guys for having me today at Supporting Client Health and Wellness. It's always fun when I get to come present for this class. My name's Jamie Fisher. I am the board certified behavior analyst at Far Northern Regional Center. And today we're going to talk about an introduction to autism and Captain resources. I don't have the best internet, so I am going to turn off my camera so that my audio doesn't get choppy. So here we go. All right, we're going to start with an intro to autism. All right. So, autism spectrum disorder, otherwise known as ASD, is on a spectrum, meaning that there is a wide range of severity within this diagnosis. ASD is reported to occur in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups. Furthermore, ASD has both genetic and environmental influences. According to the CDC, 1 in 31 children are affected by ASD. Additionally, ASD is nearly 3 times more common in boys than it is in girls. To obtain an ASD diagnosis, an individual would have to display differences in both areas. Social emotional skills and communication, such as lacking reciprocity in social interactions, lack of eye contact, inability to sustain back and forth conversation, and both verbal and nonverbal communication, and behaviors, which looks like stereotyped or repetitive motor movements or use of objects or speech, insistence on sameness and routine, fixated interest, hyper or hyposensitivity to sensory input, etc. So the first area there would need to be a difference is social skills. So some differences with social skills include the lack of ability to intrinsically participate in social reciprocity. This can look like not participating in back and forth conversation. For example, one might ask a person with ASD, "How was your day?" And rather than the individual with ASD responding and then asking the same question back, they may only give an answer to the question posed to them. Secondly, is eye contact. Oftentimes, individuals with autism do not make eye contact naturally when engaging in conversation with others. This can make joint attention very difficult. Joint attention is the ability to share attention with another person on the same thing. For example, if I point at something and say, "Look," joint attention would look like the other person also looking at what I'm pointing to. Nonverbal communication is typically also an area where those with ASD demonstrate differences. Body language, gestures, eye gaze, and facial expressions are all skills that those with ASD do not typically demonstrate without explicit teaching. In fact, this can often be viewed as a hidden curriculum. A neurotypical person might learn how to respond from their previous experiences in their environment, while those with ASD may struggle with this without explicit teaching. Conversational skills is another area of social skills that can be difficult for those with an ASD diagnosis. Turn taking in conversation can be difficult, which could be evidenced by the inability to wait for their turn to speak or speaking over others. Flexibility in changing topics can also be difficult because oftentimes those with ASD struggle to engage in conversation on non-preferred topics, which can lead to one-sided conversations or conversations where the individual with autism is doing the majority of the talking and not giving their conversational partner the opportunity to speak. When it comes to connecting with others, people on the autism spectrum often have a hard time with initiation of interactions. This can often lead to isolation and a feeling of being an outsider. Many people on the autism spectrum are bullied because they are different and engage others in their own unique ways. This can lead to a lack of relationships with others. Building and maintaining relationships can be difficult for those with this diagnosis because without knowing that hidden curriculum we previously discussed, they will struggle to create meaningful relationships with those around them. And if they are able to create relationships, it may be more difficult for them to maintain those relationships. Next is communication. Communication is another area that can be trying for those with ASD because understanding abstract language, such as idioms, figures of speech, and sarcasm, do not come naturally and can be confusing to understand. We also often see difficulty in understanding questions that are being asked. When a person does not understand what is being asked of them, it can lead to confusing conversations as depicted in the image on the slide. The person in yellow asks, "How are you?" And the autistic individual responds with, "The maglev train in Shanghai is the fastest train in the world," leaving their conversational partner confused. As you can see here, the person with autism has so many things running through their mind that it can also lead to longer processing times. This can be difficult because the individual may be attempting to engage in conversation, but their conversational partner might not recognize that since it takes the autistic individual longer to respond. Verbal and expressive language can also be an area where we see some differences. Autistic individuals have varying levels of ability to communicate with others. Expressive language and receptive language can be difficult. That is the ability to receive and output communication with others. There are also varying levels of verbal communication. Some learners are non-speaking, some are speaking, and others have advanced vocabularies. Those who are non-speaking sometimes use AAC devices or PECs to communicate. Having these alternative options for communication can lead to a reduction in problem behaviors as the learner is more easily understood when attempting to get their wants and needs met. There are also a couple unusual uses of language and communication, such as echolalia and idiosyncratic language and vocabulary. Echolalia is the repetition of words or phrases that have been heard either immediately or after a delay. An idiosyncratic language and vocabulary refers to an individual's unique use of words and phrases, which may include made-up words, unconventional word associations, or the use of familiar words in unexpected ways or contexts. Additionally, there are often differences in speech pattern. This can look like monotone speaking, dramatic or sing-songy intonation, slow or fast rate of speech, and/or rhythm. All right, restrictive or repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities. The next criteria for a diagnosis is a difference in restrictive and repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities. This can look like hand flapping, rocking, hand wringing, pacing, spinning, self-injurious behaviors, and more. There are safe and unsafe types of stimming. The safe examples of stimming are often used to relieve excess energy, anxiety, or sensory overwhelm, while the examples of unsafe behavior, such as SIB or self-injurious behaviors, may be a sign of underlying pain. One might consider looking deeper to address any discomfort the individual may be experiencing to relieve potential pain before moving on to behavioral strategies. Those on the autism spectrum also typically thrive in a stable and constant environment. What I mean by this is that having a routine daily The individual with autism may be more successful because they know what to expect and what's coming next. Visual schedules like the one seen here can be a great resource to assist those with autism with knowing what to expect. This not only helps to ease anxiety, but also provides the opportunity for autonomy for the individual. Additionally, having extra time warnings for transitions are important so that the learner is able to prepare for change, which is oftentimes a point of contention. Giving prior warning and time cues is a great way to help ease some of the anxiety that comes from these changes in routine. When it comes to focused interests, those on the spectrum may become hyperfixated on their preferred topic of conversation or other interests. They often have a narrow range of interests and will talk repeatedly about certain topics. Some on the spectrum will only hold or play with preferred objects or toys. It is not unlikely that autistic individuals use their toys in non-functional ways that are different than the intended use. For example, while a neurotypical individual might use a toy car to drive or crash into another car, a person with autism is more likely to line their cars up or sort them by color or size. Finally, there are sensory issues that can be associated with autism, such as being more or less sensitive and having an intense interest in extreme sensory experiences. And we will talk about this more in the next section. So we're going to talk about ASD and sensory stimulation. Many children and adults with autism have a dysfunctional sensory system, commonly referred to as sensory integration disorders in ASD. This typically manifests in one of two categories: hyposensitivity or hypersensitivity. Hyposensitivity is defined as being underreactive to sensory stimulations, such as pain not registering, not being bothered by extremely loud sounds, etc. Whereas hypersensitivity can be defined as being overreactive to sensory stimulations, like bright lights, loud sounds, and certain textures. The three sensory systems are the tactile system, the vestibular system, and the proprioceptive system. The tactile system includes nerves under the skin's surface that sends information to the brain. This information includes light touch, pain, temperature, and pressure. Dysfunction in the tactile system can manifest as withdrawals from being touched, refusing to eat certain textured foods, refusing to wear certain types of clothing. And dysfunction in the vestibular system can manifest in one of two ways: either being hypersensitive and fearful of ordinary movements, such as swings, slides, ramps, and inclines, or being hyposensitive and actively seeking out intense sensory experiences like spinning, excessive body whirling, hand flapping, or jumping. Lastly, a dysfunction in the proprioceptive system is defined by a lack of bodily awareness and motor planning. This could manifest as clumsiness, a lack of awareness of body position in space, or resistance to new motor movement activities. Now that we know more about sensory stimulation and how it affects people on the spectrum, we can discuss daily regulatory activities. Daily regulatory activities are activities that can be done to help reduce the frequency of problem behaviors, such as repetitive behaviors, off-task behavior, mouthing, SIB, disruption, and aggression, and increase the ability to access self-regulation tools. In fact, research shows that regular physical activity can help to reduce anxiety and emotional outbursts, help with impulse control, support social skills, and improve attention and focus. Some examples of these daily regulatory activities are jumping, running, doing karate, playing sports, dancing, and more. These activities are recommended to be done daily for at least 15 minutes for the best. All right, diagnosis. When concerns arise about whether or not an individual may have a diagnosis of ASD, it is important to go through the proper channels. The first step would be to talk to your primary care physician. Next, one would either get a referral for a psychological evaluation or to contact your local regional center to attain the same type of evaluation. During the evaluation process, the evaluator will use a variety of strategies to complete their assessment. These strategies include reviewing collateral information, doing a direct observation, psych testing such as the ADOS, as well as other assessments as are appropriate for that individual. Some challenges with diagnosing ASD are that ASD shares traits with disorders like ADHD and OCD, which can complicate the diagnosis process. Cultural sensitivity needs to be taken into account as well, because oftentimes behaviors that are seen as impairments may be cultural norms that could affect the diagnostic assessments. Finally, those who are high functioning may not meet criteria, which leaves their needs unrecognized. When it comes to who can complete a diagnostic assessment, there are strict guidelines. Those who are qualified must have a state licensure in a medical or mental health profession, typically performed by a developmental pediatrician, neurologist, licensed psychologist, and/or psychiatrist. The diagnostic criteria is found in the DSM-5. So after the assessments are completed, the diagnostician will reference the manual to determine whether or not a diagnosis of autism is warranted. Neurodiversity movement. What is the neurodiversity movement? This is a social and political movement that advocates for the acceptance and celebration of neurological differences such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. It promotes the view that these differences are not disabilities or disorders, but rather natural variations in the brain function that contribute to human diversity. The diversity rights movement started in the 1970s. The roots of DEI go back to the 1960s during the civil rights movement. At that time, the United States was still deeply segregated. Discrimination in hiring, housing, education, and public life was legal in many places. In the 1990s, the neurodiversity movement began, and the term neurodiversity was first coined in 1999 by Judy Singer, who's an Australian sociologist. In the early 2000s, publications of books and articles such as Neurotribes by Steve Silberman started to emerge. And the book Neurotribes considers the idea that neurological differences such as autism, dyslexia, and ADHD are not errors of nature or products of the toxic modern world, but rather the result of natural variations in the human genome. There was a huge impact on society once the neurodiversity movement emerged. It was evident that there was an increased awareness and understanding of neurodiversity. It promotes inclusive education, such as IEPs and 504 plans, and workplace practices, workplace accommodations. The neurodiversity movement advocates for mental health services tailored to neurodivergent individuals and challenges the medical model of neurodiversity, which often pathologizes these differences. While there are many wonderful advances that have been made as a result of the neurodiversity movement, as with all things, there are criticisms about this movement. Some of those criticisms include the downplay of the challenges and difficulties faced by neurodivergent individuals. It promotes a one-size-fits-all approach to neurodiversity, ignoring the diversity within the neurodivergent population, as well as failing to recognize the need for medical and psychological intervention in some cases. There are four main principles related to the neurodiversity movement, and they are acceptance, celebration, empowerment, and social justice. Acceptance. The neurodiversity movement emphasizes accepting neurological differences as a normal part of human variation. Celebration. Rather than viewing neurodiversity as a deficit, the movement encourages celebrating the unique strengths and abilities of neurodivergent individuals. Empowerment. This movement aims to empower neurodivergent people to advocate for their own needs and challenge societal prejudices. Social justice. Neurodiversity advocates fight for equal rights, access, and opportunities for neurodivergent individuals. Post-diagnosis. After receiving a diagnosis of autism, it is important to understand the diagnosis so that one better understands how to move forward. First, ask questions. Clarify with the diagnosing professional what the diagnosis means, strengths, challenges, recommended supports, etc. Get a written report. Make sure that you have documentation of the diagnosis. You will need it for school, insurance, and/or services. And finally, learn about the diagnosis of autism. Some reliable sources are the Autism Society, state or local autism organizations, books or podcasts by autistic self-advocates, and the Captain website. Autism looks different for everyone. There's no such thing as someone who looks autistic. Every person on the spectrum exhibits varying levels of ASD symptoms and intellectual functioning. Some areas where individuals might require additional supports are daily living skills, communication, social interactions and routines, education and workplace. This can include classroom accommodations such as an IEP or 504 plan for children and workplace adjustments for adults, and medical or behavioral supports. This includes different types of therapies like speech, OT, mental health support, ADA, and/or sensory accommodations. After receiving a diagnosis and learning more about it, accessing services to support the individual is going to be of vital importance. For children, parents are encouraged to learn about and explore the options of getting an IEP or 504 plan. Exploring early intervention options that were previously discussed would be the next step for parents of children under the age of 3. It is often stated in the field of neurodiversity that the earlier the intervention, the better the outcomes later in life. Next, consider various therapies such as speech, ABA, OT, and/or social skills group, if that seems appropriate and is desired by the parents. For adults, it is important to look into workplace accommodations under the ADA. Finding a therapist or support group that understands neurodiversity to have people to talk to about the diagnosis can also be valuable as the individual navigates their diagnosis. Finally, explore the option of coaching or life skills programs if that seems helpful. For school-age children, having support in the classroom can be extremely important. As we know, those with autism often think and process information differently than a neurotypical individual. This is where having an IEP or 504 plan comes in handy. An IEP is an individualized education plan. To qualify for an IEP, one must have one of 13 qualifying diagnoses, and the disability must adversely affect their educational performance. Those 13 qualifying diagnoses are autism, blindness, deafness, developmental delay, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairments like ADHD, diabetes, epilepsy, specific learning disability, speech or language impairment, and/or traumatic brain injury. Without one of these diagnoses, an IEP is not an option. While an IEP might not be an option for everyone, there is another way to support a learner in the classroom, and that's with a 504 plan. The 504 plan is protected under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. A student qualifies for a 504 plan if they have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity such as learning, reading, writing, walking, communicating, concentrating, breathing, eating, and/or major bodily functions like your immune system, neurological system, etc. And they need accommodations or services to access learning on an equal basis. So, unlike an IEP, a 504 does not provide special education, just accommodations such as extra time, preferential seating, and/or behavior plans. All right. After receiving a diagnosis, the individual with the diagnosis often requires support from those around them to direct this new experience. Some suggestions are to join an autism support group, either online or in person, to connect with others who share similar experiences. This is so important because being neurodivergent can often leave the autistic individual feeling alone or isolated, and having others in their circle who can share their experiences can be comforting, knowing they're not alone in this journey. Next, for parents of loved ones with autism, consider parent or caregiver training programs. This is not a reflection of your ability to parent, it's strictly because parenting a neurodivergent individual versus a neurotypical individual is very different. And having those tools in your toolbox can make life a lot easier. If this is your own diagnosis, look for an autistic-led community for shared perspective and advocacy. Focusing on strengths rather than areas of opportunity is also of extreme importance. Identify interests, talents, and areas of motivation. Encourage opportunities that celebrate individuality and help with self-esteem. Sometimes focusing on the positives rather than the negatives can create a culture of acceptance and perhaps even pride in their diagnosis. Just because an individual has autism does not mean that they are incapable of being successful or living a happy, full, and meaningful life. In fact, some of my favorite moments in life are working with my clients because they often offer a different perspective and curate opportunities for professionals like myself to learn from them. After all, autistic individuals are the experts on their diagnosis, right? So I might have the formal education of what autism is and what it looks like, but I am not an autistic individual, so I'm not speaking from a first person experience. For anyone, planning for the future can be important, but for those on the spectrum, it can be even more important to plan for what's next. Helping the individual understand what's coming next can help to eliminate any anxiety that might be associated with this diagnosis. For children, some things to consider are transitions that occur during life. This includes transitions from school to adulthood, independent living, and vocational training. And for adults, it is essential to consider long-term planning. That can look like securing housing, at-home supports, employment, healthcare, and self-advocacy. So now we're going to talk about Captain. Captain is one of the reliable autism resources that we talked about previously, but we're going to take a deeper dive into what Captain is, and I'm going to also show you how to navigate the Captain website. So what is Captain? Captain stands for California Autism Professional Training and Information Network. It's a statewide network of professionals that come together to create and disseminate information and trainings related to autism. Captain's a multi-agency network developed to support the understanding and use of EBPs for individuals affected by autism spectrum disorder across the state of California. And something that's really cool about Captain is that it's specific to California. So other states might have programs that are similar to Captain, but no other state has Captain. It provides statewide access to trainings and resources and evidence-based practices, or EBPs, that are culturally sensitive, family-centered, cost-effective, and competency-based. provides web-based access to materials and resources that are vetted and align with the current evidence-based practices. And they provide information and outreach to other interested provider groups who could benefit from learning more about EBPs. So professional organizations, higher education, self-advocates, and allied health providers. And as a captain cadre, it is my responsibility to provide trainings on evidence-based practices. So if any of your agencies are ever interested in specific evidence-based practice trainings, you can reach out to me directly and we can schedule something. So the captain's vision is to develop a statewide training and technical assistance network with a focus on evidence-based practices for individuals with autism, inclusive of stakeholder agencies who will disseminate information at the local level. So these are the Captain Cadre goals that we have every year. The first goal is to increase knowledge about ASD and evidence-based practices through systematic dissemination of information. So this is like what I'm doing right now, right? Disseminating information about autism and Captain and evidence-based practices. Goal 2, increase implementation and fidelity of EBPs in schools and communities. So this would be like doing a specific evidence-based practice training with an agency and then helping them to implement that evidence-based practice in their internal practices. And then our third goal every year is to increase interagency collaborations to leverage resources and standardize a process for using evidence-based practices. And so this year, our interagency collaboration was that all of the regional center Captain Cadre members across the state of California came together and worked together to create a new module on the Captain website for reinforcement. And I don't think that it's been published yet. I think the old one is still up, but that is what we have been working on over the past year. All right, so who makes up Captain? School SELPAs, regional center employees, family support agencies like ROWL, and higher education professionals, so university members. So there are, in our region, there are probably 20 cadre, and we are a mix of these 4 different groups. So there are some SELPAs, there are some regional center employees, some family support agencies, and some higher education professionals within our region. And what's really nice about that is that everybody brings a different perspective to our Captain meetings. And so we're able to work more efficiently and effectively with different perspectives coming in. All right, so how to find Captain. This is the Captain website. If you've never visited it before, I would highly recommend visiting. It's www.captain.ca.gov. And we are going to go ahead and go over the website here in just a few. So what are evidence-based practices? EBP stands for evidence-based practice. They're interventions and practices that have empirically demonstrated effectiveness. They've been identified through meta-analysis with strict criteria for high-quality research, and they describe core intervention components that have been shown to reliably produce desirable effects and can be used individually or in combination to form more complex procedures and programs. Why do we use EBPs? Because they're supported by research, and there's a better chance of success if we use EBPs because by research. It is the best practice. They inform clinical decisions. There are some legal and regulatory requirements that require us to use evidence-based practices. And then the standard of practice for medicine, psychology, education, and allied health. So these are the 28 evidence-based practices that are recognized by CAPTAIN and the NCAEP, which is the NCAEP is one of the authorities on autism. So the 5 that are yellow are the newest evidence-based practices that have been added to this list. And we'll go more into this when we visit the website, as well as this. So knowing of these EBPs, it helps us to know which treatments have evidence of effectiveness and which treatments do not. It allows us to make informed decisions when we select treatments and provides us with the opportunity to support individuals with ASD in reaching their full potential. Incorporating EBPs into person-centered planning. It's important to find out what's important and meaningful to each individual you work with and seek to incorporate that into their program. One size does not fit all. We focus on person-centered planning, and that means individualized programming. Identify meaningful goals that help each individual achieve their hopes and dreams for the future. And select services that incorporate EBPs to support teaching new skills and reducing challenging behaviors. Sharing EBP information with individuals, families, and service providers. For individuals, families, and providers that may not be familiar with the term EBP and or would like more information and training on them, CAPTAIN website offers a link to the Autism-Focused Intervention Resources and Modules, or AFFIRM. They can be accessed through the website. So I'm going to stop sharing really fast so that I can open the website and share that. Okay. So when you log on, this is what the website looks like. It is an invaluable resource. I really hope that you all take this information back to your team and disseminate it so that they're able to access these resources as well. If we scroll down here, oh, my mouse isn't working, sorry. If we scroll down here, right here on the right-hand column, there is a link called EBP trainings. You can click that. And this is where all the PowerPoints are. There's one for every training, or for every evidence-based practice rather. And there's also one at the beginning for understanding and selecting evidence-based practices. So you can watch this one or go through this first one and kind of get a better idea of how to select an evidence-based practice for your learner and better understanding which ones would be the best pick. And then once you figure out, okay, this is an evidence-based practice that I'm interested in learning about or using, you can go to that one. So like, let's just stick with reinforcement since we were talking about that before. And scroll down to reinforcement, and it gives you the full PowerPoint, which is really cool. You can go through all the different, it goes over what CAPTAIN is, it goes over reinforcement, bribing, everything. So that's really cool too. If we go back, let me reshare my page. Hold on just a second. Okay. And we scroll back down. This is the home page again. And we scroll back down. Same column on the right, there's a link for AFFIRM autism learning modules. And this is where the really good stuff is. When you click on that link, it's going to take you to these modules. There are 2 at the beginning that I recommend all program administrators watch and or BCBAs. the introduction to autism, I would say for all DSPs, and then selecting an evidence-based practice for, admin, BCBAs, people who are making clinical decisions. And then if we scroll down, there are modules for everything. There are all sorts of different for paraeducators, for right here, if we access these Affirm modules, it goes into every single evidence-based practice that we've talked about. And it tells you, okay, time to complete 2 hours, but it's going to teach you all about antecedent-based interventions or cognitive behavioral instruction strategies or differential reinforcement. I mean, the list goes on and on. So really an invaluable resource. I hope you guys access that and get the information about autism that be really valuable to take back to your team. So that is all I have. Does anybody, I think we have time for questions, Jen, do we?
Absolutely. I think this is a great opportunity for people who might have questions for you, Jamie, because I know you're not usually on our calls. So if anyone has questions for Jamie, she is an amazing wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure she's happy to answer them.
Absolutely. You can either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Either way is fine. No questions. All right. That never happens, Jen.
You know what? It happens all the time in this class. So, so that's okay. It's so much information, but oh my gosh, Jamie, I learned a lot just from, even though this is all stuff I've heard before. It's super informative, and I really appreciate you coming today and providing us with this great opportunity to learn about ASD.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do it. So anytime you guys want to learn more about behavioral services, if there are specific behavioral topics that you guys are interested in hearing more about, reach out to Jen, let her know, and she and I will get together and maybe I'll pop back in and do another class one of these days.
Oh, we would love that. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.